It's sure looking like net neutrality is about to be dismantled in the U.S. That's the Obama-era policy put in place to ensure a free and open internet. It kept internet providers from using pricing or throttling to favor their own services. You call it a two-tier internet, which is a term I far prefer to net neutrality. I think a lot of people, unless you know what it is, it doesn't mean anything. What we're really talking about here for people at home is, if Bell wanted to advance its Crave TV option, it could offer a faster, easier to access version of that and throttle Netflix so people would get sick and tired of waiting for Netflix and use their own services, right? Like that, just to make it clear for people who don't necessarily follow this at home.
Right, that's an example of how they might do it. They might similarly engage in what's known as zero rating, so that when you accessed Crave TV, it wouldn't count against your data plan, but when you access Netflix, it would. And that would, of course, drive customers to reevaluate the cost and benefit of those respective services and move in the direction of Crave, because it would be perceived to be cheaper because they wouldn't face some of those data rates. Now, in a two-tier internet system, the companies like Netflix can likely pay if they had to. The challenge is for lots of other providers, and Crave TV, if they ever tried to venture outside the country, would be a good example. They'll have a hard time getting off the ground if they face this two-tier internet structure. And that's why I think a lot of people are focused on what's happening in the United States and concerned about what it's going to mean for competition in terms of new internet services.
I've been consistently confused by the new chair of the FCC. Ajit Pai is a guy, he knows this file intimately well. He's no neophyte. He really does know his stuff. And yet he's really against the grain, pushing ahead with these changes. Do you have a sense of how he came to think that net neutrality is such a hindrance to the way the internet and the e-commerce economy is going to grow?
Well, he comes out of the telecom world, and let's face it, those large telecom players in the United States, and arguably here in Canada, have never been supporters of net neutrality. In the United States, they have fought this every step of the way in the courts, and in a sense, they've played a long game, the hope that sometime a new chair would come along, perhaps a new president would come along and would reverse things. And this idea that somehow the market will solve all, and that as long as you disclose what you're doing, that's good enough, I think runs completely counter to the day-to-day experiences of millions of internet users who don't take the time to read the terms, would have a hard time understanding what some of those different terms would mean, and don't feel like they have a real choice in any event if they're unhappy with one provider to shift over to another.
And do you have a sense, I mean, is this a done deal in the U.S., or do you think there's still a chance that this can be derailed between now and, I think it's mid-December we expect to see it?
Right, yeah, the vote's scheduled for mid-December. The outcry's been significant. We have seen at least one Republican senator come out against it. But I have to believe that they recognized this was what was coming. They consulted on it over the summer. They overwhelmingly heard from Americans saying that they were against it, and they've moved ahead nevertheless. So I can't imagine they're particularly surprised with the anger and concern that it's elicited, but it clearly has put them out of step with many other jurisdictions around the world, and Canadians looking down and seeing what's taking place there have to feel pretty good that, at least for now, we've got politicians and regulators that see that this is not a partisan issue and remain solidly in support of net neutrality.
Important points all. Michael, thank you very much for making the time today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Michael Geist, University of Ottawa law professor and Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law.